Today, I want to welcome Joe Travaglione. And yes, that's hard to say, and it's very Italian and maybe mobsterish. We're actually going to cover that in today's episode. But Joe is the founder of Future State Cyber. He works with managed service providers, which are outsourced IT companies, and he has some amazing lessons. Joe and I have talked multiple times, and the hardest thing in every conversation is when to end it because it's so enriching. I enjoy the conversation so much. And Joe has some amazing insights for business, whether you have an MSP or whether you have another MSP. And he actually credits some of those insights to brushes with the mob. And so, Joe, welcome to Leaders and Legacies.
Thank you, Craig, so much for having me. I appreciate all the time. And first time we're going to record one of these conversations we have.
Oh, I love them. I absolutely love them. All right. So, how do you say your last name again?
It's Travaglione, but I always say it when I'm talking and introducing most people, I just say Joe Travaglione to give my American spin because it's always been tortured in the classrooms or wherever I go. So it's Travaglione.
Uh, and are you Sicilian?
I'm both. I'm Neapolitan and Sicilian. So yes, I have both in me.
Ah, well, cool. So, yeah, and you were telling me the question everybody's asking, and it was kind of baked into the intro. What are your connections with the mob?
So as I grow up, as I live now in the Baltimore area, I always get questions with my last name, and they're like, "Hey, do you know any mobsters? Or what about the Sopranos? Do you know anything about the Sopranos?" And I always have a funny story that goes with it. And in ninth grade, I bring this kid home, and I bring him home and introduce him to my mom, and I'm like, "Hey, mom, let me introduce you to my buddy. His name's Sam DeCalvacanti." So we're hanging out, we're doing everything. My mom takes him home. On the drive home, she goes, "Hey, do you know who that kid is?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's Sam DeCalvacanti." She goes, "Oh, it's Sam the plumber." I'm like, "His family owns a plumbing business?" My mom's like, "No, his grandfather's the head of the New Jersey mob. It's the DeCalvacanti family." So, as funny as it is, growing up and learning, my best friend's family was the mob and owned multiple businesses growing up. And I learned a lot of funny lessons growing up and living with these Italian immigrants that I grew up with in New Jersey.
So, what's one lesson that just stands out?
Oh man, the lessons I do. I mean, as crazy as it is, I didn't realize that the mob was running business the whole time. As we were talking earlier and thinking about through things, it's like the mob runs numbers, which is now legalized gambling. The mob runs taxing or giving out loans, which now we call credit cards. So it kind of is funny to me to see all these businesses that they ran that were illegitimate are now run by the government or other programs and they are legitimate. So as funny as it is, I take a lot of that hard work and immigrant lifestyle and like really apply it to what I do in business, and it's helped made me successful today.
Yeah. And I've heard Michael Franzese, who's a capo in the Colombo family, and he talks about that. And he's walked away from that lifestyle. He's very clear, hey, if you're a gangster, don't care what kind of gangster you are, there's one of two outcomes. You're either going to die or you're going to jail. So he's
100%.
he's not condoning it, but he said, on the gambling, he said they should let the mob run the gambling. It will be more efficient, more profitable with higher customer satisfaction.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, help us unpack that because I think there's a part where people struggle with that because we have baked in their head that the mob is bad, and yeah, they for good reasons. But what is it that they do differently than the government that makes Michael Francis say that?
Ah, it's funny, as crazy as you think about it, it's like they have good leadership and some management and development baked in, if you think about it, of some way of teaching their members. They have a structure, they have some sort of development path. I hate to say it, but they are literally employing business and developmental skills to their mafia or their members or their ranks. And there is some sort of structure and process and procedure that they follow that works, and it might be a little shady or not on the best way, but those same business principles obviously work illegally and legally too.
Yeah, their performance improvement program has a little bit of a different spin to it.
Yes. Yes. A lot to be desired there.
But I've heard Michael Francis say that as well. As a matter of fact, he's put out a management book about how to run your business like a mobster. And again, he's not condoning the lifestyle. He's walked away from it. But what you said, hey, there's some things I learned in the mob. They're just good leadership principles.
Yeah, there's that got so many leadership principles and like, at the end of the day, I think it's really one-on-one development. Regardless, the mob is doing that. They're meeting with their people, they're telling them what they can do good, they're telling them what they're doing bad. When they tell them what they're doing bad, the consequences are much more severe, but I think they're giving them feedback in a constant way. And what I see, as stupid as it is in the IT industry a lot of times, is when these leaders, they're entrepreneurs, they ended up being like a technician, right? And they started to own their business and said, hey, I want to do more than be a technician. I want to run a business. But the one thing they're missing is that leadership and development. And the mob did that. They took you from the stoop down to like a capo to the next level and the next level up. And we need to do that in business too. We need to take down leadership and development skills and take it to our teams and build self-managing teams. And as crazy as it is, that's why the mafia was a little bit successful too, is they had a lot of people that were able to self-manage themselves, right? So how do we help business owners do the same thing? And that's what I'm trying to help every day, is give them that structure and some processes to help them do the same things.
So are you the consigliere?
Yes, I try to be. You're right. I try to be the whisperer. I try to not be the top guy, but more giving the whispering in the air. So that is a wonderful metaphor for it, or simile, actually. That is
That
perfect.
now there are probably a couple people that don't know what a consigliere is, but I think it really makes sense. What is it? What would you call a consigliere?
Yeah, he's the right-hand man to the Don, right? He really is just giving him advice, not really telling him the right or wrong, but giving a lot of advice, giving a lot of ideas, and then providing structure and processes to the people underneath. He's the right-hand man. He is the maybe the COO of the company, right? For lack of better terms.
Yeah. Well, and I see so many people get resistant to having a coach or having, some type of counselor, and that's what consigliere means, is counselor, having that in their business. And I always go back to Michael Jordan. I don't know the exact count, but I would love to know how many coaches Michael Jordan had. I know it was more than one.
Yes, yes. I don't know the exact count either, but I know Tim Grover was his personal coach, and then you're right, he at least had 5 to 6, three on the Bulls, I would think, and then a couple on the Wizards.
Yeah. So one of the best athletes of our lifetime saw the benefit of having a counselor in his life, his consigliere, multiple consiglieres, to help make him better. And I think business owners who resist that, I would imagine there's a little bit of pride in that, where they're like, well, hey, if I was really good, I wouldn't need this advice. But I think that's wrong thinking.
Oh, I agree with you 100%. I think it's the opposite, right? And I always say, like, why is Michael Jordan good? Was he always had masterminds, right? And I always love the term of masterminds because I want somebody or five people smarter than me in whatever area I'm trying to learn. So if we're using the Michael Jordan reference, at some point when he was getting into business and learning how to make Air Jordans, one of the most successful shoes out there, he was probably leaning on five different masterminds than he did when he learned how to be the best basketball player that he is right now, right? And I always think with the people with that infinite mindset of like, I'm constantly trying to grow, I'm constantly trying to develop, you always need somebody to coach you that's giving you some advice on how to get better. So, unless you're, I would say, climbing or camping, right? Unless you're a camper and you're ready to stay where you are, which I'm not, I'm a climber. I'd always look for a coach. I'm always looking for somebody to give me new advice and insight to make me better. And the other thing I realized too is I always thought like I wanted the celebration, but I think more of the journey, the pain of the journey is really what makes the success at the end so worthwhile. So like having a coach that's there to help you along the way sometimes points out the joy that you don't realize you're experiencing while you're growing the whole time.
Oh my goodness. Let's slow down. Let's visit that again, because that is so powerful. I mean, I catch myself doing that every now and then is something big will happen. And I'm just so focused on the next milestone that I miss something significant that just happened.
We miss it so many times. It's one of those things I like try to write down to people sometimes when you're doing a priority, as crazy as it, or IT, it's weird because we do project management a lot, and you'll see these Kanban boards, and what they ultimately have is like projects we're working on. And then as crazy in the IT world, you have interruptions. And it's the same things as a leader. I just don't think they can look at it in like a project management board, the similar way I like conceptualize it, because it's like, hey, I'm working on this initiative, right? And it might be, let's fix like a call, after hours call thing. Well, at the end of the day, you might have to fix 4 or 5 more procedures along the way to just get that completed. And sometimes we don't celebrate all those little things you do because you're like, I didn't complete the one initiative I started, but you actually completed 7 different other processes along the way, and we don't celebrate that. So we do need to take more time and realize, hey, I've done 20 things, even though I didn't get the other thing done, but I might have done 20 things along the way that are stepping me up that ladder to get fulfilled and get all the way accomplished to that initiative. So we don't spend enough time like looking back and reflecting, especially like high achievers. They're constantly going.
Yeah. You know, I, no kidding, last night I was having this conversation about my physical health. And you know that I had pre-major setback. I legit should be dead. And I'm frustrated because I can't run a mile. And I'm ashamed to say it. I can't run them. I can run a half mile. I can't run a mile. And I was at a neighborhood party last night where there was a physical therapist, and I was telling him this, and he was doing for me what you're talking about. He's like, Craig, look at you. You're fit. You're upright. You are exceeding one. There's very few people like me that went on the ventilator and lived. Most died.
Yeah.
And those that didn't die, I'm learning bit by bit are in much worse health than me. And he said, Craig, you need to celebrate where you are. You've done a lot. It's easy to forget that. So, how do we bake that in? How do you recommend that businesses make that a process to celebrate those things?
You really have to like at some point, I don't know. I like to do some priority list or some items out there, like just to give myself an idea. But it really comes back, I tie it back to when I did the 75 hard. And what I say, and I kind of always harp this on the businesses too, is like 75 hard is 75 days of a mental toughness challenge where you have to do like 7 items, right? And it's 2 exercises a day and they have to be broken up. One has to be outside. You have to drink 128 ounces of water, a gallon of water a day. You have to read 10 pages of a book, and there's a couple other items that go with it. But at the end of the day, what it taught me was like mental toughness, and you can do anything you put your mind to, right? But the thing is, oh, and one other thing is you have to take a picture every day. And I hate taking a picture every day. One, because everybody thinks it's like a health thing. But at the end, when you take the picture on day one and then you look at day 75, I do understand like the reason they took the pictures. And it's kind of the similar, how do we do this in business? It's because every day I could look back on the picture and see the 1% change every day, right? So how do we integrate into our businesses that celebration of that 1% change every day to realize you spent 75 days, or like if we do a year, you made a 37% change, right? And everybody wants to see the 100% change, right, Craig? So for me, I put a lot of little like goal lists and I do them quarterly, and I try to do like 5 personal goals or business goals, and I write them down and then I try to measure them. And what I try to do is I try to do a measure on a quarterly basis if I'm doing it. I'm doing it like one at the end of the month, end of 60 days, end of 90 days, right? And you're right. I've learned more to reflect on that because a lot of the day, and the days I usually look at it the most are the days when I'm the saddest or the most anxious, because then I want to go look back and I'll be like, okay, well, look at what I said I was going to start today. And then, okay, well, I'm this much further. And maybe that brings me some joy or brings me some rejuvenation to go down and tackle it. Because as a business owner, we're in the infinite game. Unless you're selling your business and getting out of it right now, right? You're going to be here for a long time. So I'm ready to take the marathon on. And like, how do I celebrate it? Because once we complete the marathon, it's almost like the Ironman. Then are you getting on the bike and doing the bike portion? Like what? Like you got to celebrate something along the way. So I try to bake in these little challenges to help me celebrate. And then a lot of times it's those masterminds, because you have to talk to your friends and then they smack you around a little bit too to say, hey, you actually done all this stuff. So it's a combination of writing it down and then really leaning on your mastermind groups to help you get there.
Yeah. Well, and I love what you said about the 75 hard. There's a couple things in there that I think are really powerful. The taking a picture. So when you said that, I had never heard that concept before, but it immediately registered because I shot a video I've been shooting a few videos lately for work, and I was looking for one, accidentally pulled up a video from 2 years ago, 1 year out of the hospital. And I'm looking at my face. My face is like all fat and what have you. And I was like, holy cow, I thought I was skinnier then than I am now, and but it's looking in that picture and realizing, oh my goodness, I've made so much progress in 2 years. I'm probably a couple pounds heavier than I was in that picture, but it's muscle, it's
Yeah.
not fat.
Yeah.
And so the concept of taking a picture of your business, taking snapshots of your business so you can reflect back at where you were and the progress you've made. I think that is so incredibly powerful. The other thing you said about 75 hard was about mental toughness, about doing hard things. And there's something I learned recently. There's part of the brain, bear with me, I'll throw out some jargon. It's called the anterior mid-cingulate cortex.
Okay.
And it's a part of the brain that controls emotions, impulse control, reward delivery.
Yeah.
It's a part of the brain that grows. But the only way it grows is if you do things that make you uncomfortable.
Mhm. Okay.
And that's what
Awesome.
you're talking
Oh,
about.
100%. And that's the other reason I do uncomfortable things. I have like the life longevity things now. And I really think like if we stop doing hard things, like it stops our cognitive function. So I've been trying to really push in, like, and I've been messing with my parents about stuff like that as they're getting older. And we always talk about it. And I'm like, I just feel like, I don't know. I want to continue to work as I get older, maybe not all the time and enjoy more life experiences, but I constantly want to be on this journey of like, how do I make it better? And as stupid as it is, I've been reading a lot of these books and a lot of them on your future self. And it's like, how do you get there? And it's like you got to celebrate it up front. But like as stupid as it is, I didn't realize the whole time, like I really do like the struggle. I didn't realize it. That's probably why I don't celebrate the victory at the end, to be honest, as much.
Yeah.
Because like I really do like the suck, even though I'm saying I don't, you know what I mean? And I'm like, I'm looking back, so I'm trying to figure out how to navigate both. But you're right. I think like in that journey of self-discovery and struggle is like where you find yourself, and it really is rewarding.
Well, and let's tie this back to to the mob example. You said that the mob has a structure that produces predictable results.
Yeah.
And the and one of the things is if you quit producing, it's not like you can keep producing at the same level and make it in that world. You need to produce at that level and then continually increase, because if you don't, there's a feedback mechanism that doesn't work out in your favor.
Yes. Yes, and that's probably why they had a interesting retirement plan there for the mobsters, right?
Yeah.
Once you stop producing, your retirement plan changed very quickly.
And the retirement plan was fully funded.
Yes, fully funded. That's right. They took care of your family with a little bit. That's about it. That's right. You weren't there, but everything else was good. But
Yeah.
yes, it was very interesting. Like I said, as to tie it back and for looking through that stuff is like it really did build me, right. The immigrant mindset and all those things. I didn't realize what it was building me for, and the camaraderie and stuff. And the other thing I didn't realize that I do have a lot of respect back for of my heritage, of the Italian heritage, is like building a team and being like really respectful and having each other's back. I never realized how much that like really relates in the workplace, of like always having your coworkers back and then doing what's good for them. So really, it really helped prepare me for where I am today. And I didn't realize it looking back.
Well, okay. I think there's something to explore there. So the mob has a code. You mess with another guy's wife, and you're dead.
Yeah.
So there are lines that if you cross in the mob, you get retired
Oh,
quickly.
yes.
I don't see that in businesses. I see some just absolutely horrible backstabbing, cutthroatedness in business that's allowed and sometimes rewarded.
Or the other thing, right? If you don't perform, we keep you longer too. In the mob, you're done. At the end, at some point, like you don't perform, you're gone. In businesses, we carry people a lot longer than we have to as well, right? We don't realize we string along bad producers.
Yeah. Why do we do that?
A lot of times I feel like it's managerial fear, managerial lack of managerial courage. And the other thing I think happens is a lot is like process. And I hate to come back to process. I always say people, process, technology, but at the end of the day, it's like, were you a good manager and lead them to do everything you had to do? And I always go back and talk to the guys as I'm coaching these leaders now, and they do really good one-on-one development and they've changed. I always start with like, did you fail them? And if they think they fail them, they go into like a 90-day, how do I recommit myself to my employee to prove if they're the right employee that's going to make it in the organization, right? And then if you do all those things and you try to develop them to get them where it is, then they know that they're not the right fit, right person for the right job, and they're gone, or they leave anyway because they see it too, right? So like it becomes a mutual feedback and mutual commitment where they know that they're not right for the job, or they actually see the writing on the wall and they leave anyway. So I feel like if you do have the right process and a really good development structure, like you can do that better. And a lot of times when leaders don't have that good management process, they're afraid to do it because they don't know if the person's right or wrong.
Yeah. Well, and as you were talking about that, I kept thinking about somebody I had to cut loose about 25 years ago. I did it wrong. I did it wrong in so many ways. Yeah, and we'll touch on a number of the things that you're saying. So, first thing is when, so I'm sitting there cutting them loose and I have somebody from HR with me. And in the process of firing him, he like escapes and runs to my boss. He was like, he was just completely shocked. And so we wrapped things up, got him out of the building and what have you. And the guy from HR said, Craig, that seemed to be a surprise to him that he was being fired.
Yeah.
So that was, you were talking earlier about the constant feedback,
Yeah.
having that. I thought, because I'm a little bit more intuitive, I just assume everybody sees what I see. And I was shocked that he was shocked. But
Yeah. That's the
I
biggest
wasn't,
one. The assuming that they know, or like we always think they actually know what we're thinking. We miss on that a lot.
yeah. And so one of the most valuable pieces of feedback I got in the moment was when this guy named Doug Bonner, he was just a great coach to the managers at that company. He said, Craig, your job is to make sure they're not surprised when this happens. And so that's one piece. The other thing is when I fired him, his coworkers started coming up and thanking me. And so that told me I let this go on too long.
Yeah. Yeah. The culture. The team will thank you always. You think it's gonna, that's the other thing. We think it's gonna hurt production. And then when you're like, you do it, you actually get thanked by the team and the production goes up with one less person. You're like, wow, how'd that work?
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, when you were talking about just running your business, lessons from the mob. I mean, I was familiar with Michael Francine's book, but the more you talk about it, I mean, it just really, really resonates. So, if you were to, as we wrap up, if you were to just kind of throw out three things that people should do based on when you're working with companies, the top three things that you see people are missing. For somebody listening, what are the next three things they should focus on in their business?
I really think it comes down to like the development. I think development's one of the biggest things in having clarity to goals for everybody on your team. So if you can build a self-managing team that has clarity to the goals, what's going on, right? So let's have clear goals, one that everybody understands. And a lot of times it's like, if they're not producing, did you explain those goals correctly? So it's like a lot on you, right? So is the desired outcome so clear that they understand it? So it's always like, it's usually my fault. It's like, I didn't clearly articulate what we're trying to do. Or is what you said a minute ago. I thought I told them what it was, or I thought they knew what it was because it's so obvious in my mind what it is that I didn't even tell them what it was. So I'd say a lot is like, let's have clarity to the desired outcome of whatever strategic initiative it is, right? And if we don't, let's keep focusing on to make sure we have the team there. And the other thing is like one-on-one development. The second thing would be like, how do we have a process on one-on-one development so that way the team understands what we're doing? And then the last thing I always see in the management of IT companies is a lack of like a management language, right? And there's so many management tools and language of like, what's your meeting structure, right? If you have multiple departments, is the meeting structure the same every time we do it? So like there's a million management tools, hence why there's great to have coaches and masterminds to help you. But the third thing is, what is your management language? And just being on it. Is it the EOS language? Is it the Rockefeller habits? I don't care, but let's just have a language that everybody knows when we walk in, here's how we do it in the company. And those are probably the three biggest things that impact companies I work with.
Yeah, well, that's great. And so again, you work primarily with MSPs.
Yes, managed service providers, because my expertise ends up being the cyber security space. But with any of the leadership and development, if anybody wanted to reach out, I'd always be willing to help there. My expertise in operations ends up being on the cyber side, so I can add the leadership and the cyber to those businesses, hence why I help mostly managed service companies.
And how can people reach you?
Definitely on LinkedIn. I have futurestatecyber.com as my website. I'm always adding content there. Craig is motivating me to put more media outlets out there too to get out there. And then on LinkedIn, I'm Joe Travaglione on LinkedIn as well.
Well, Joe, thanks so much for sharing these insights on leaders and legacies.
Thank you so much for your time, Craig. I really appreciate it.